Hey, how you doing today? This is the Canadian Commie. A little bit of a different format today. I'm here with Julius Arscott, who is the Labour Forward candidate for president of the Canadian Labour Congress, which he is part of the Workers' Action Movement. How you doing today, Julius?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. As you can see, everything's really weird and wonky here. You got to do what you got to do when you're trying to make
That's
things
right.
happen. Low budget Canadian feature right here.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And COVID
Uh,
to boot. So, I'm in my sunroom, which usually is my storage room.
oh
But
yeah,
because
very
of
nice.
COVID, I actually made it a usable space. So
Oh, it's
sometimes
beautiful. You got plants around you. You got the kind of thing.
around.
How lovely. How lovely. And the view. The view looks wonderful.
Thank
So
you.
Julius, let's start with just the real basics because honestly, I don't think many viewers really even know what the Canadian Labour Congress is or why it's important. Can you illuminate us?
Absolutely. So the Canadian Labour Congress is part of the House of Labour. It is the national level of the House of Labor, similar to the American AFL, American Federation of Labor. And it's kind of like a pyramid, right? So at the top there's actually an international body that deals with organized labor or unions. Then you have national sections like the Canadian Labour Congress. Every province has their own labor bodies. Like in Ontario, we have the Ontario Federation of Labor, for instance. That's where I am. I'm in Toronto. And then from there, you had area councils such as the Toronto York Region Labor Council, and what makes up all of these, the House of Labor, are affiliated unions, and most unions in Canada are affiliated through their locals or through union centrals. So the importance of what is about to happen in mid-June is a national convention of the Canadian Labour Congress, which happens once every 3 years.
So would it be fair to say that this is like the political wing of the unions, that this is the unions creating politics within themselves and between themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to an extent. So it is the gathering place of unions, the vast majority of unions in this country. So the idea, in the best of any given situation, is that this is where unions come together, they bring policy, we have policy discussions, and adopt policy platforms that we want to see. For instance, at the CLC, we want to see the labor movement nationally take on. There often are disagreements between affiliates. There are issues such as rating. That is something that's been going on for decades now, and there have been different attempts to tackle it. There are more sort of internal bureaucratic issues in terms of representation, because basically what happens is unions send delegates to these meetings to make decisions. And the number of delegates can be contentious that each union sends. And then there are big issues, international issues, issues about taking on the federal government, issues such as international solidarity with oppressed peoples, and issues about organizing the unorganized. A lot can be done at the federal level. The labor movement, in my opinion, has been, there's no action happening in the labor movement across the country, really, when you get down to it. So
Yeah, that is actually what I was going to ask you, which is
yeah,
one of the major thesis of this channel, and I've been pretty upfront about it, is that we need to confront capital, and the only option we have left is through large-scale general strikes. Easier said than done, of course. And so my question to you would be, aren't why aren't the unions organizing to have a general strike?
well, first, I would say that I think that the reason why a lot of unions do not want to even talk about general strike action is because in order to do that, you need to have a certain level of engagement of the rank and file membership, which is not something that most unions actually want. Most union, and when I say unions, I mean the union leadership, the current status quo, business as usual leadership that is quite content with the level of disengagement that exists There's something called the RAND formula, which exists right now, where by law, if you are in a certain workplace, like in the public service, you automatically pay dues to the union. The union politically doesn't really have to do anything unless they feel threatened by the membership. So I think that there's a few facets here. One of which, like organized labor, is the organized, in terms of the working class in Canada. You have organized labor as one wing of the working class, the organized working class, and on the other you have the labor-based New Democratic Party, which is the party that we have right now in Parliament. And I think that the labor bureaucracy far too often relies on essentially on parliamentary cretinism to try to win very modest reforms for workers in Canada. And it is not working. It has not worked for, well, ever really, but particularly now when we see what's happening with Doug Ford, his complete dismissal of long-term care, concerns of long-term care facilities and sick days, when it's overwhelmed. The idea of sick days is overwhelmingly supported by the public, including by other former candidates, leading candidates of the Conservative Party here in Ontario. Yeah. And yet the sitting government does not feel compelled to do anything to change. They threw out 3 days, which is nothing, doesn't address the greater issues of people who are sick. And frankly, they don't feel compelled to do anything because they know that the NDP, which is the opposition party, and the labor movement won't back up their demands with action. And that's what's missing.
And so it would be fair to say that if you were elected as the president of the Canadian Labour Congress, that is something you would be pushing towards. Absolutely.
And I mean, as a president of the Canadian Labour Congress, I can't force any union to go on strike. But what I can do is talk about unions going on strike. Yeah. I can talk about mass action. I can support any union, any local, any bargaining unit that goes on strike. I can even encourage unions that are, if legislated back to work, that they defy back to work legislation, or talk about the possibility of unions defying back to work legislation. It's kind of like a war of ideas, and right now we're not getting any ideas from the status quo leadership. And we in the Labour Forward campaign, I encourage folks to check out our campaign and support us. It's www.laborforward.ca. We're running a fantastic team of candidates who I'll go into in a moment. I got to plug in my laptop because I just realized that I'm running out of battery here. But what I want to say is we want to shake things up like they've never been shook up, well, in a very long time, in generations. And so I encourage folks to check out our campaign.
Do you need to pause for a moment?
So I'm going to go right now and plug in my laptop, okay?
Yeah, let's pause for a minute. What I'm very interested in about this, and when I joined Socialist Action and started to pay attention to what you were talking about through that organization, about the Canadian Labour Congress and the Workers' Action Movement and all of this, I came to realize that I had no idea what was going on. And it's making me realize and think, like, our media is simply not talking about this event, or simply not talking about union organization at all. And I would kind of like your opinion on why that is the case.
Well, I think that historically there have been labor reporters, but there haven't been any labor reporters in a general sense in the press in decades. I think that, of course, the boss's media doesn't want to report on what workers are doing. They want to pretend that class is something that doesn't really exist. And so they purposefully try to ignore what's going on. And frankly, I think that the lack of any real mass action in the labor movement for a generation at least has really sort of added to the apathy that is sort of felt in society about labor unions, which is very unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
There are some.
Have you been interviewed by any of the sort of corporate media outlets or anything like this? So
no, I haven't. No, we haven't.
What I'm hearing is that this is a Canadian Commie exclusive. I'm the labor reporter. Okay, interesting. Interesting.
Yes, yeah, you are definitely in the front of the line. We have done a few interviews, but they have been uh, sort of alternative media, like
Yeah.
much like yourself, activists who are engaged in progressive movements or in the labor movement, who want to hear more about our campaign.
I do have a question. You've basically already answered this question. What can people do to support you, either directly or monetarily? And where can they find out more? I'm sure you're going to plug that website again.
Sure, yeah. Well, first I want to say that I'm part of a great, fantastic, dynamic, diverse team. I'm running for president of the CLC. We have two other candidates who are part of the Labor Forward platform. Jenny Esnard is running for executive vice president, and Sandra Griffith Bonaparte is also running for executive vice president. There's two positions on the CLC executive. Um, we are running on a platform where we want to address the issue of two-tier bargaining, union democracy, fight for equity within the labor movement, which is a big, big issue and needs to be addressed. It's kind of a high-profile issue these days, and I mean, the working class will not win until we deal with equity and have equity representation and fight for workers of color, because they're the most precarious, most vulnerable workers. So we're looking for endorsements from individuals, from community organizations, from unions, from locals, from everybody. And we're also, asking for financial donations. You can visit our website. Everything is there. It's www.laborforward.ca. My contact information is there as well. So please check us out. And if you want to help out in the campaign in any way, we're looking for folks who have skills in graphic design, video editing, social media work. We want to get the word out, and we want to build a movement. And that's really the most important thing that I want to say here before we go, is that win or lose, we want to build the kind of mass working class movement to make the changes that we need in society, whether it be fighting for equity or fighting against two-tier or fighting for eco-socialism. In order to transform society away from capitalism, we need to build a mass working class movement, and we are in the trenches. So join us.
And it is worth pointing out and touching on that this seems to be building momentum, right? That the previous election for the CLC, you kind of caught people's pants down a little bit. They didn't expect you to garner as much support as you actually did. And so now, do you genuinely feel you are in striking distance of seizing power in the CLC?
Well, we ran a campaign in the Ontario Federation of Labor where we ran two candidates. Our candidate for president, Barry Conway from CUPE, Ontario, receives 36% support. And our candidate for vice president, Kurt Young, received a 34%. And these are for a rank and file campaign like the one we're running again, which does not have the backing of any of the big unions, but we were endorsed by many different locals and activist community organizations. Those numbers are huge, and they're very indicative of a real hunger for change in the labor movement by the rank and file, who are sick and tired of the status quo. They're tired of being sold on settling for less in their contract negotiations. They know that there's major problems, and these problems need to be addressed, and they can only be addressed by an organized working class. So what do I think our prospects are for the CLC? I'm not sure. I mean, I think that things are going quite well, and we're getting more phone calls by labor councils across the country who want to interview us. They want us to speak to their delegates who will be attending the Canadian Labour Congress Convention, from media groups such as your own who want to hear from us, and even from some executive boards of some pretty big unions who want to hear what we have to say. So I think, like I said earlier, we're in the business of movement building, and running a slate of candidates is one way to get there. It's part of the puzzle. It's an important part, but it is not the only part. And so stay tuned. The Labor Forward campaign is organized by the Workers' Action Movement, of which I belong. You can check out the website there at www.thewham.ca. So we'll be doing a lot of organizing through WHAM, through the Workers' Action Movement, going forward after the campaign.
Perfect. Well, Julius, thank you so much for your time today. Good luck in your race. And if people want to get involved with this, laborforward.ca or thewham.ca will get you connected to find people like Julius who are fighting for our rights and trying to get the ball moving to the left again. All right, Julius, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much.
If you've made it to this point, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you would like to donate to my Patreon, it's down in the description below, patreon.com/thecanadiancommie. Please go to thecanadiancommie.com and bookmark that page so that if YouTube takes me down, you'll always have a place you can go to find me. You are doing wonderfully out there. There are people in the world who are fighting for you, and we're hoping that you can join us. Thank you so much. Good luck. We're going to need it.